Congratulations on the purchase of your Continental M6 from Ken's Sewing Center. First, you did receive an instruction book. So a nice spiral bound book that shows you everything you need about your sewing machine. So that's nice and handy to have. I'm sure you love the space and the lighting. You do have a stylus with your M6. Makes it easier for you to select the stitches on your screen. The first thing we want to do is talk about threading our machine and winding a bobbin. So our bobbins are actually Janome bobbins. And if you look on that post on the inside very carefully, you'll be able to see the letter J on it. It's a good idea to stick with Janome bobbins because these are made slightly different than other class 15 bobbins. They have a little rubber in them, so as they're spinning in your bobbin area, they're not going to needlessly wear away your bobbin area. So class 15 bobbin, but they're the special bobbins with the letter J on them. Your bobbin, when you go to wind a bobbin, of course is going to go on the post up here. Now when you put this bobbin on, slide it on and then spin this until it turns no more. And I'm going to do this again just so you can hear a little click. And sometimes you have to spin it further than you think. So don't worry, just keep spinning. When you wind a bobbin, as you can see, our thread is just up and over our thread mast. And the only place your thread goes when you go to wind a bobbin is under this little bobbin knob right here, this little disc. Make sure that that thread is under that disc. So give it a good tug like dental floss so that it's under that little disc. Take about 12 inches of your thread off to the right. Wrap it around the top a number of times. And then on the very bottom, there's a little gray disc that has slots in it. That is where you take your thread, slide it in there, and pull it, and it now cuts it. Engage your bobbin winder and push the button. Now the nice thing is that your M6 has a separate bobbin winding motor. So you could actually wind a bobbin from another spool of thread and still be stitching. So being very efficient with your sewing throughout the day. It, of course, will automatically stop when your bobbin is full. Or if you just wanted a partial bobbin, you can stop it yourself. We'll just pick this bobbin up, and there's a convenient little thread cutter right there, just like that. To put our bobbin into the bobbin area, we're going to hold our bobbin as if this is like the letter P. So it would spin counterclockwise. We'll remove the bobbin cover and simply drop it in, again like the letter P. And then there's a big metal piece. I'm kind of pushing my finger on there and you can see it flop a little bit, spring up and down. You want to take your thread under that big metal piece and then around this gray area that says number 1 and number 2, that's the threading path for your bobbin. And then when you pull your thread to the right, when you get to number 2, once again, it will cut your bobbin thread. And we'll put the bobbin cover back on. And just take your thread like dental floss and it snaps under there. Under this bar. And then that traditional down, up around number 5, up on the right side, down on the left side. This big hook. And then before we go any further, it is a good idea to position your needle in the correct position with the needle down, needle up button. You'll see this button that looks like 2 arrows. One is white and one is black. That is needle down, needle up. So if we touch needle down, touch it once, it goes down, touch it a second time, it goes up. So now it's in that perfect position for your needle threader. So we did the big hook Now there's a little hook at the top of the needle. Every machine has had this hook since the beginning of time. And the important part is that you get the thread all the way to the left. You might have been able to hear a little click of the thread. I really had to give it a good tug to get it all the way to the left. After that little hook, we'll go into this icon that says number 9, and then there's a thread cutter on the left side. Now, one of the most important things when we're threading is to lock our machine. And what do I mean by that? On the screen, you can see a lock in this lower right-hand corner. That is actually going to drop our presser foot. And I know the first concern is, well, now my thread tensions are open because my presser foot is down. Not in the locking position on Janomes. It keeps your thread tensions open, but what else it's doing, it has lowered your foot so that there's plenty of room for your needle threader, and it locks that needle bar. It keeps that needle bar from moving when you push your threader down. So now just push this with purpose, not a delicate flower, not violently, but just with purpose, and there's your needle threaded for you. And see, this is actually showing you that your tensions are open, because see how we can pull thread, pull thread, pull thread. And as you know, if our tensions were closed, we could not be pulling that thread. Since we locked the machine with the key, we're going to unlock it with the key. And now we're all set to stitch. When you first turn on your Janome M6, it goes to straight stitch down the center of the foot. So I have some fabric here, 2 layers of fabric, because that's what we most often stitch on. And there are several ways that you can raise and lower your presser foot for your sewing. There, of course, is this button right here. It looks like the profile of a presser foot with an arrow up and down. And that, of course, will just lower your foot and raise your foot. Okay? If you wanted to position your needle, your presser foot in an exact spot, you could simply lower your presser foot, and now there's that manual lifter in the back that will allow you to raise your foot and lower it back down. Another way that you can lower your foot is by simply stepping on your foot control and start stitching. So it starts stitching. We've stitched about 2 inches of thread right now, but you might be a quilter and you might be wanting to chain piece, feed one fabric under, then the next fabric under, and keep going. And you would like that foot to come up ever so slightly so you can slide your next piece of fabric under it. So we just stitched about 2 inches of stitching right now, but you might be a quilter and you might want to chain piece. You know how you can just simply slide your next piece under your foot, and you would like your foot to come up ever so slightly so you could do that. Or you might be a garment sewer putting a sleeve into an armhole and you need to ease that fabric in, and it would be helpful if that foot came up ever so slightly. You have an icon on your screen that will allow you to do that. This icon right here under the word utility looks like the profile of a presser foot with a needle going through it. Let's select that. Since we selected it, you can see that it's actually turned yellow. So now if we stitch a little bit, that foot, and when we stop, that foot comes up automatically. So now if you needed to pivot or chain piece, all that convenience for you is right there. When you're done stitching and you say you now want to admire your work, there, of course, is the scissor button. So when you touch that scissor button, it's pulled to the thread backside, cut it, and raise the presser foot. Isn't that beautiful? Now, when we did cut that thread, you probably heard a kerchunk. And let's talk about that for a second. And I'm going to stitch about 1 inch and cut the thread again. That kerchunk, that is a completely acceptable and expected sound. What that is are actually your feed dogs dropping. So a couple reasons why it does that. Because first, it gives more room for your thicker fabrics that you might be working on. And also, the feed dogs are now out of the way so that when you pull your fabric out, the fabric is not needlessly rubbing on those feed dogs and wearing them away. Granted, they're not going to wear those feed dogs away in a year or so, but it just is a preventative measure for the long life of your Janome M6. So in addition to when it first turns on, it goes to the straight stitch down the center of the foot. You can see that we're actually in our utility menu. And these are those basic stitches, straight, zigzag, seam, overcast. And you can see that there are actually 2 pages. It says 1/2. And you can page to the next page by simply touching this arrow. But I'll have to tell you, myself, I actually forget many times what was on page 1 when I turn to page 2. But there is friendly help for you right on your screen. This icon, it looks like a piece of paper with a bunch of little ticks on it. And it looks like it has a corner turned up. When you touch that icon, it now shows you all of your stitches in your utility menu. And as we go through the rest of the M6, you'll see that each of our collections of stitches shows us all the stitches in that particular group, just like this. As you look at these stitches and you find the one you want, you can simply select it from there. And before we select one, let's just talk about this M and the L and the R that we see next to some of the stitches. M means that it's down the middle of the foot. R means it's to the right, and L, of course, means it's to the left. So as we're looking at our stitches, let's just select that M stitch. That's our zigzag stitch, just a classic zigzag stitch. It's telling us what presser foot to use, the A foot. And the A foot is what comes on already attached to your M6. And there's the little letter A right there. So this is that standard basic foot. This little black button, many times you've heard the term of a hump jumper, that helps you go over uneven thicknesses of your fabric. That's what that little black button is for. So let's attach this. You can simply put it under there and snap up. That is one way of attaching a presser foot. We'll show you another way shortly. So once again, we'll just do some stitching. So this is that default stitch length and width, just right there. You, of course, can adjust your width and your length. As you can see, this is your length, how close together those peaks of your zigzag are. And this is your width, how wide it is. Your M6 is a 9mm machine. So you could take that up a nice wide, generous width of your zigzag. And when we stitch, and again, the scissor button. And so you can see you have a great opportunity to change the size of your zigzag and all of your stitches on your M6. So let's talk a little bit about other stitches, because you have a great collection of decorative stitches on your M6. And this icon right here, it looks like a scroll on its side. When we touch that icon, this is now showing you all your collection of stitches on your M6. And you can see that there are 2 pages. And we're just going to start with the applique menu. Fun technique to do applique, and many are familiar with this blanket stitch that is pictured right here. Once again, you'll see that it has the M and the R, and some of the stitches have the L on it. Again, it's letting you know where in your presser foot that stitch is going to be positioned. It's telling us we want the F foot. So you do have two different F feet that come with your M6. This is the standard F foot, and you can see a little red triangle on that foot. That's a great foot to help you position your applique where you'd like it to be. This is an open toe applique foot. So again, there is nothing in front of your needle, so you can clearly see where you're going. So we'll take this A foot off, and actually let's answer the question, well, why can we not use this A foot, and why does it recommend the F foot? The answer is on the back of the foot, the bottom side of the foot. The A foot is a perfectly flat foot. So it's perfect for that flat straight stitch, perfect for that flat zigzag stitch. The F foot, and while it might be a little challenging to see on the screen, actually has a teeny little tunnel cut out on the bottom side. And that's there so it allows the buildup of your stitches to feed under your presser foot easily. So anytime you're using a decorative stitch, you're going to see that this F foot is going to be recommended for your stitch. So a short time ago, we showed how to attach the presser foot by just pressing it up and snapping it in. Another way of doing it is first lowering your presser foot. You could try to position this foot under there and lower the presser foot, but sometimes my eye-hand coordination isn't the best. So what I many times will do is just lower the presser foot with that button, and now we can reach around the back, use that manual presser foot lifter, and snap it on. Whenever I snap it on, I do raise it up to make certain that that foot has snapped on. Sometimes it'll make a noise and like that sounds like a click, and it really wasn't. I just want to be assured that the foot is snapped on your M6. Now, when you do a decorative stitch, it is recommended that you use some type of stabilizer. In the sewing world, we think of it, in the garment world, I should say, we think of like interfacing that gives our fabric support when we're doing buttonholes and such. In decorative stitches, we use some type of stabilizer to give your fabric support that it needs for all that stitching that's going on. So we'll just put our stabilizer under there and step on our foot control. Oh, it tells me to lower the presser foot. Okay. So we'll just acknowledge that and lower the presser foot and start stitching. And let's take a quick look at this. So there's the applique stitch, or one of your applique stitches. Now this is at the default setting that was designed by Janome, this default setting of stitch length and width. And you might say, well, I would like my stitch, those appliques, those little ladders, to be a little further apart. So you might want to adjust the length of your stitch. So you can see this again is your length and your width. To see more adjustments that you can make on your M6, on your decorative stitches, this little icon right here, this black box that looks like a triangle with a plus and minus, that opens up a whole lot of more settings for you. So here you can now take this up to, so 3.5, we adjusted that to 3.5, so now it has the same length and width. Let's do a quick little stitch of this and see if this is what you like. And you can easily see the difference in the settings. Now here you might say, that is the exact stitch I want every time I select that particular applique stitch. Now instead of having to remember to change the length, instead of having to put a sticky note around your sewing room to change the length and width, across the bottom of this screen you can see the letters FS on some of the icons. FS stands for favorite stitch. This is where you can change the length and width and settings of your decorative stitches and then save them. So every time you recall them to use them, it will be at that setting. You'll see one file folder that has an arrow going in. That of course is you saving your decorative stitches. One arrow coming out, which is you recalling your stitches. And then there's also a trash can if you're say, oops, those are settings that I do not want. So you can then trash them or delete them. Let's save this. You can see FS1, favorite stitch 1, favorite stitch 2. So you can save two different settings of the same stitch. And we're just going to select FS1 and it is now in there. I promise you, I'll show you to confirm that. But you can see that now around the stitch length that we adjusted to 3.5, there are parentheses around it. So that's showing you that you saved it and those are your favorite settings. Let's close this. And now just to prove that that favorite setting was saved, we're going to select a completely different stitch. That's a nice satin stitch. But when we go back to our very first stitch, there you can see, once again, the parentheses around the 3.5. So that is letting you know that you saved that stitch to your favorite settings. Let's talk a little bit about a few of the other decorative stitches. And we're just going to go into the animals. There are 2 pages. Okay. We're going to go into the animals for a minute. And you can see as they're coming out of your presser foot, it's asking us for the F foot. So we're just going to stitch a little bit. Let your fabric move back and forth. It knows how it needs to move your fabric to get a perfect looking elephant. But let's stop for a second and talk about the elephants. Because when you're doing a decorative stitch, many times you want a complete decorative stitch. In this case, a complete elephant. You don't want half of an elephant. So instead of you having to gauge when to stop, that's what this button, the target button, is for. When you touch it, you'll see the yellow light starts flashing, and you have told your M6 to complete this stitch and do no more. You noticed as it started to complete the elephant, it started slowing down. Just keep your foot on your foot control until it comes to a complete stop. And now your elephant's done. We'll touch that scissor button. And there's your elephant. So that target button is giving you a complete design. In this case, a complete elephant. Let's take a look at one more decorative stitch. There are so many decorative stitches. It's a good idea to take a piece of fabric, some stabilizer behind it, and just start stitching out a bunch of your decorative stitches just to experience them and see how one is cuter than the next. But we're going to go to our scroll again. We're going to go to page 2, and we are going to select a new collection of stitches called Mirage. Mirage stitches. You'll understand this in a minute, but Mirage, you say, I can't believe my eyes. That's what mirage is. Think of a mirage when you see that watering hole when you're in the middle of the desert, right? As we have seen on TV, on movies and whatever. It's asking for the F foot. You do need some stabilizer for this, and your fabric. You're going to take your fabric, fold it right sides together. So remember, right sides together. Have your stabilizer underneath and kind of overlapping, so centered over your fabric. And the important part of this stitch is that red triangle on your F foot. That red triangle, the point of your red triangle, needs to fall just off of the fold of the fabric. Just off of the fold, not on your fabric. And this will make sense in a minute as we start stitching. Get that thread under the foot. So again, fold our fabric right sides together. Positioning this perfectly, for me, works best if we lower the presser foot and now use that presser foot lifter in the back to position the point of that red triangle just off of the fold. So remember, we can use that target button for it to complete the stitch. It slowed down. Remember, let it finish by itself. So you can see part of the stitch is on the stabilizer, part of it is on the black fabric. And when we open this up, is that not cool? Okay, great mirage stitches. You say to yourself, how did you get those like that? And that's the secret of the mirage stitches. If we open up the settings, you can adjust the length and the width of these circles. But as we look a little further over, there's another length which actually will allow you to adjust the spacing between your stitches. And I have to show you one more thing with the mirage stitches. So here we just took fabric and did a mirage stitch on it. So anything fabric. So whether you're piecing a project together or clothes that you own, you can do mirage stitches on them because it's fabric that you can easily fold and put some stabilizer behind it. But you actually can join fabric together. So we're going to take another piece of fabric with some stabilizer and do right sides together as always. So here's our stabilizer, our two pieces of fabric, and our stabilizer on this side. We'll lower our foot and position just the edge of our foot along the edge of the fabric. So this is going to create our seam allowance. Let's just select a different stitch and start stitching. And there you notice that while we were actually stitching, I touched the target button. So yes, you can do it while it's stitching. So there you can see the stitches, and when we open it up, give it a big tug. Don't be afraid to really tug your fabric. There are your mirage stitches that actually are holding your fabric together and created that seam. It is a sturdy seam that you truly can use on your quilts to hold blocks together or even on clothing. So great collection of decorative stitches. But let's go to our t-shirt icon. What is our t-shirt icon? The t-shirt icon, this is what we call our sewing applications. It is where Janome has selected the perfect stitch, stitch length, presser foot pressure, thread tension for a wide variety of sewing and quilting techniques. Here you can see the word sewing in the upper left-hand corner. There are 3 pages. Here are zipper installations. There's one for a pouch zipper. So if you're making zippered bags and pouches, it is effortless. It takes you step by step putting a zipper in to a pouch. But let's talk about our quilting menu. The feathers probably will remind you of a quilt. And there it says quilt in the upper left-hand corner. You can see that there is patchwork piecing. And again, it's telling you what presser foot to use. But let's go and talk a little bit about free motion. It says, please make sure the proper presser foot is attached. So for free motion, you have about 6 different free motion feet. Some differences are open toe versus closed toe, as you can see on the spring feet. Also on these snap-on feet. Oh. This is a ruler work foot. And this particular foot will allow you to do echo quilting. Echo quilting, if you've ever dropped a pebble in water, you've seen echo quilting. How it makes a ring and a ring that then fills all those rings all across the pond or the puddle that you drop that pebble in. And that's what this foot will help you do. When you go to free motion, you always want to make certain that the presser foot that is pictured is the foot that you have on. There is a spring foot, which is a foot that you will remove this ankle and screw the spring foot on. If we go to this one, this is a snap-on foot. And we'll just simply use one of our snap-on feet. So we'll take this off and attach this foot. Now, as far as dropping your feed dogs, it's done it for you automatically. It's adjusted presser foot pressure, thread tension. All you have to do is put the foot on that is pictured and you are good to go. So we have a little quilt sandwich right here. Now, when you first do free motion, quilters love to pull up their bobbin thread. And the nice thing is that the free motion stitches on your M6 are designed so that it does that single stitch and no more when you first step on your foot control so that you can pull up your bobbin thread. So we're just going to step on the foot control. There's that single stitch. There's our bobbin thread. You can use your manual lifter in the back to reach under there. And there's our bobbin thread. We can now lower the foot again. And you can use your hand wheel over on the far left side if you want to sink that needle right back into that same position. So now start stitching. Have your speed control, this dial right here, at just about half speed, maybe just a shade more. Floor it and start stitching. Let me get this thread out of the way. And just a light touch of your hands. Don't use hard pressure to push this down, just very, very light. My fingertips are barely touching this. Beautiful stitching right there. These thread tails, quilters will tell you you can take these and put them on a hand sewing needle and bury them. It's a personal decision if you do that or if you just want to cut these. But explore and experiment with your free motion, even going into your ruler work setting. Again, a friendly reminder, please make sure the proper presser foot is attached. Again, there is that foot that is pictured. Here is that foot that comes with your M6. And that's the perfect foot for successful ruler work. One other little change you'll have to make. You'll notice medium and light. That refers to the thickness of your batting. If you are using just one layer of cotton batting, it is best if you use the light setting. If your presser foot is too far off of your fabric, you will get some thread breakage, and I understand that is really frustrating. Been there myself. But if the foot is too high, that's what will cause it. And so light will just position that presser foot closer to the bed of your machine and closer to your fabric. So experiment with your Continental M6 and enjoy the many, many years of sewing on your Janome.